Okay, so hello and welcome back to another Unity tutorial. In this one we'll be doing part 2 of yesterday's video, which is just a follow-up showing you how to have events with data that's been passed through rather than just having no data on a void event. So I'll show you how to do it for something like an integer or a string, just like a primitive data type, and then I'll show you how to do it for your own custom classes, which is probably more useful to you, and I'll explain why it's very useful in a minute, but it's really not that difficult. Like the code will be making free scripts for every new data type we want an event for, but even then you could do it all in the same script. It doesn't matter. It's very little code, and obviously people might think, well, you shouldn't need to add new code every time you want a new data type. The problem is if you want to use the generic type T, which is just any data type, you can't go and create a Unity event that says any data type, because Unity needs to know when it compiles that it's all linked up with the right data types. So it needs to know if you drop an event listener on something, what data type it is. You can't just say, oh, it's any type, because then you'll get problems with, well, it won't let you compile. So to be honest, the advantages much outweigh the disadvantages, because the disadvantages, you have to go write a few lines of code every time you want a new data type, but you shouldn't really need a new data type very often. Most of your events are going to be void events, and when you do need data, then you just do this, and it's very simple. So I don't want to waste too much time. We'll get into it in a minute, but first I want to thank my patrons, with special thanks to Michael, Remy Baldwin, and Phil Baum for their donations on Patreon this month. If anyone else is able to help out, then the link is in the description below. My mouth is very dry, that's why I keep messing up my words. I can't pronounce words properly right now. But yeah, you also get access to the project file as well, so if that's something that interests you, then obviously go check that out in the description. But apart from that, let's go. So hopefully my mouth doesn't just dry up completely this video. I don't know what it is at the moment. Maybe it's because it's like the start of summer, that might be it. But anyway, what we need is we need to go to the code from last time. Now I've got it nicely set out, events listeners, Unity events. So first we'll go to our void event, and I'm just going to go copy paste, Control C, Control V, and take this copy version and just call it int event. We'll do int. That you can do whatever data type you want. So obviously call it int event. The parameter type is int, and it's a new int event. Whoops, a new int event, like so. So basically just change all the voids to ints. But because it's a class, it's uppercase I for int, whereas the actual data type inside, well, Unity or C# is a lowercase I. So yeah, and also because it's not this different one with void, like void's a special edge case, we can just have empty code there. It doesn't matter. So this is what our int event looks like. It's an int event, and this is just for creating it in Unity. So obviously, if I go back now, and I go to the base thing and go create a new game event, int event. So I'll make one now. Let's just think what it could be like. On number selected, right? I mean, I usually go for like game event underscore and then maybe some other thing underscore this. But anyway, that's the int event. It just seems like a random empty scriptable object, but it does have some logic on it, because keep in mind it inherits from base game event, which has all this code in it. So it does have more to it than that. It's just very easy for us now that we inherit to just change the data type we want this instance to be. Cool. Now we need to make the actual Unity event that does the int passing as such. So here's a void one, so let's copy paste, call it Unity int event. Make sure you change the copy one, otherwise you'll get some class problems with naming and stuff. Unity int event takes in a parameter of lowercase int, and that's it for this one. And finally the listener, we'll go to the void listener, and we'll go copy paste and make the void listener an int listener, like so. I think I spelled that wrong. Wait, listener. No, that's right. Yeah, so let's change this to be int listener. Takes in, oops, it does that when it compiles sometimes. Int event, and Unity int event. So we have now written all the code we need to do to allow the new event system that we've created to pass integers around. So what we'll do is we'll use somewhere in our code. Let's say, how should we do this? We'll go to the Genji, movement controller. I've not actually set up like a system to use this, obviously. I'll do an actual good one in a second with our abilities. I've got a good idea to do like a really quick thing. But for now, when we dash, let's have a private int current dashes equals 0. Whenever we dash, we current dashes plus plus. So we add one to the dashes. And then let's say we invoke that event. So what we do is we, I know I called it on number selected, so we'll change the name of the event in a second. But let's just add a serialized field private reference to a one of those events. So we'll say it's an int event, so int event, right? And then we'll call it, for example, on dash count update, right? So this will get raised whenever the dash count is changed. So we in the code will say, oh, we've dashed, so that dot raise, and it takes in an integer, so current dashes, right? This is just an example. So this is somewhere where we're going to raise an event that has an integer being passed in. So we've passed in our current dashes, and now that's all done. Technically, the last thing we need to do is actually assign it in the inspector. So on Genji, I'd need to, which script was it? The dash one. So I'd attach it here, game event underscore on number selected. Now let me actually go and rename it to be like on dash count updated or update. I don't know. The point is now we've done that, and the dash counter now doesn't need to know anything about any other system in the game that cares about the dash count. All it's saying is, oh yeah, I dashed, and here's how many times I've dashed in total. So now I could have some other random script over here. So I'll just call it like, event tester. This is just for the sake of this video. It's not actually part of the game, and I'll just call it like event tester. I'm not going to put it in a namespace. I'm just going to keep it for this video to show you guys some good uses of it. So the use we're going to do really quickly now is we're going to make a public void display dashes, right? Display Genji dashes. Alright, so I'm taking an integer dash count. And we're just going to say debug.log dash count dot toString. Alright, so we've now got some code. Specifically, its one purpose in life is to say how many times Genji has dashed every time he dashes. Alright, it's pretty useless, but that's the point. So this code will now have on it an int listener, which is what we've made. So the int event that we're listening for is on dash count updated. Plus, we drag in the event tester. You've probably done this before when you call functions from buttons. But the difference is now you'll look on event tester script. At the top, we've got display Genji dashes, right? With the dynamic int type. Now we could go down here and click on display Genji dashes int, but we would have to type this in. Essentially, it's a void event at this point because we're not telling it to use the actual value passed in. We're saying use our own value. Essentially, call the function using the value 2423, but we want to use the actual value. So if we say use the dynamic int, there's no parameter option there. Now, whenever we dash, this code is going to handle logging the dash count, right? So if I dash 1, 2, right, 3, and so on, yeah? So whenever I dash, it's going to do its job. But because it's not hard-coded, there's no references between the two things. If I just delete the event tester and just press play and start dashing, I get no errors, okay? The Genji thing is still invoking that event, but no one's listening in, so essentially nothing's happening, but it's still raising the event. Now, obviously that's one huge benefit of this, is that no hard references means you don't get errors when you just detach certain things. They listen in and then they're gone. Essentially, this int listener is attaching this script to the raiser, but it's not actually attaching it in a physical sense. There's no hard reference. Like even if I was in play mode, and I, for example, was logging the shift, and then let's say I'm like something in the scene destroys that, right? So something destroys the event tester. It's not gonna like go wrong. And then now, I could, I think anyway, press Control Z. I've brought the event tester back, and now it's gonna say 6 because it's still like the Genji dasher thing kept incrementing its dash count, but now because that thing exists in the scene again, it started listening for the number. So that's a very simple use of it, and you can take that further now. This video is going to be shorter than normal. We're only 9 minutes in and basically done, so I'm just going to show you how to do it with custom data types, which is as easy as you think. You just make a custom data type, you make your event, and you pass that through. So let's, you know, put like display ability data, right? So we will take in an ability. Now I honestly can't remember what I actually called all this. So yeah, I did call it ability. So we're going to take in an ability, right? So let's say that. Now keep in mind the ability class is not just an integer, it's got all of this code on it, right? This is an ability as such. But what we can do is we can go and say like debug.log ability name, debug.log ability dot whatever else they've got on there, you know, ability cooldown and some other things, ability dot, I don't know what other data have we got on there. You could even say, like, if you wanted to, ability.cast. You can cast an ability from here. If you were told the ability, like, you can do whatever you want. We're not going to cast the ability. We're just going to say its name and cooldown. The point is, there's more than one variable being passed through. We want to pass through loads of variables, and we don't want to make an event where we have loads of parameters, because then you have to do loads of other tweaking. You just want to pass through an ability. So, what do? Well, we're like, alright, we need an event that has ability data. So, int event, copy paste. It's an ability event now. So, ability. And keep in mind, right, whenever you add a new data or tweak the ability class, you don't need to change this at all. Unless you change the name of the class, but you probably won't change the name of the class. So we've got our ability event here, right? Cool. Close. Unity event, we'll copy and paste our int event and make a Unity ability event, which is, oh, not that, I can't paste that in. Ability, obviously it's in a different namespace, so I have to do the import. Unity ability event. And last thing is to go make a listener for the things that, you know, listen to abilities being casted or whatever we're going to do. So ability listener. And an ability listener takes in type ability, and it has an ability event and a Unity ability event. Obviously, this ability event is our custom thing we've made, and the Unity ability event is the built-in Unity event system, but taking in our own ability as a parameter. So we've done all that. We can now close it, and then back here in our dash, we'll obviously get rid of the dash count thing. That was just a little silly example. We want to say, for example, now, yeah, I've got rid of all that. When an ability is cast, or casted, I'm pretty sure the past tense is casted. I've casted an ability. I've cast an ability. I don't know. Someone will correct me in the thing, in the comments. But the point is, when an ability is cast here, this is when we want to raise an event. So we'll make a serialized field private ability event. Called it on ability cast, right? On ability cast. And I'm going to actually go put it like down here. So I'm going to put header events. In case we ever have more events in here, it's just nicer to spread it out. So what we can do is go down here and we'll say on ability cast, dot raise. We're passing in an ability, so this, because this is the ability, this class. And now we've done that. As I said, all we need to do is reference it in the inspector. Now, because I've done it off the ability itself rather than something like, the only problem with this, it's not even a problem really, is that I have to actually, well, first of all, sorry, let's create the actual game event. So create a game event, ability event. Okay, game event underscore on ability cast. So now anything in the game that cares about abilities being cast can use a listener that listens for this event. So if we go to tracer, because I got tracer now, and I'm gonna go and, oh wait, no, I'm just looking at tracer's prefab, but it's fine, it'll still be the same thing. On ability cast. So I do need to add this on all the abilities, obviously for the different abilities to be able to call it. Like so. So we've got Tracer using it all on her abilities, and then Genji on his abilities. So on his dash, basically. His dash is the only ability we actually have. Okay, so if I apply, like so. I'm actually just going to go to the Genji thing here and say player Yeah, that's fine. That should be done. So what we can do now is on this new script, on this event tester, we'll say we don't want an int listener anymore. We want an ability listener, listens in for when an ability is cast. And we're going to call the function display ability data, which is a dynamic. And now, whenever we cast an ability, so we're on Genji at the moment, so all we can do is dash. So I can say dash. When I dash, it says Swift Strike 1, which is the cooldown of Swift Strike. Now if I just go and delete Genji, and go to the prefabs, tracer, and go and, whoops, that's the scripts. Prefabs, if I dropped in tracer and press play, shift, blink, 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 recall, pulse bomb, right? Pulse bomb's on a 20-second cooldown. That's just what I was showing last time, obviously. Press E. The point is now, this other script that listens in for when abilities are cast tells what the abilities have been casted. So you could use this for your own system. You might want some UI that displays when abilities are cast, or like does something when an ability is cast, and it might want to know the ability's name. But you don't want to hard code in the ability class saying, oh yeah, go tell that it's done this. And also you don't want to hard code in the UI thing saying, oh, go grab the player. Because what if the player doesn't exist? Ideally, you don't want it to do the code. But what will happen is you'll get a null reference error. But if you're doing it this way, you won't get a null reference error. So obviously, this design is actually really, really good. Like, when I found out about it, it's basically changed the way I design stuff, because it just makes so much more sense, and it makes everything more modular and easier to add new stuff, and it's just amazing. So if you've got any more questions about this system, obviously feel free to ask below. Maybe you've got your own architecture design, like, tips and techniques that I've maybe not mentioned or perhaps not know about. Obviously feel free to leave those below too. After this video, I'm going to be getting back to the making more characters and abilities, so feel free to say below who you want me to make. It doesn't have to be off Overwatch. I just, coincidentally made 2 Overwatch characters so far, but it can be any game, any ability, just I'll make some cool things. It doesn't even have to be a character from a particular game. It could just be, make some homing, like, projectiles, or make some kind of jump attack. I don't know, whatever you want it to be. Just leave some ideas below of some cool things, and we'll get to making them. So yeah, if you haven't already, left a like and subscribe, it'd mean a lot. Join the Discord server if you wish to do so below. Help me out on Patreon if you can do so too. But apart from that, thanks for watching, and goodbye.